Fit Pro Podcast Season 2, Episode 1. Welcome to Season 2 of the Fit Pro Podcast, guys. After 107 episodes of Season 1, which I've dubbed Season 1 was just going to be an ongoing thing, but now we have seasons. Season 1, 107 episodes. Season 2, Episode 1 with Nick Ritchie. Guys, as always, before we get into today's episode, make sure you are subscribed on iTunes and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Make sure you rate and review the show so that we can get the most out of it, and you guys can as well by us becoming better based on your feedback. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you rate, review, share the show amongst your friends. There is a massive database we have at the moment with all of the information from all of the previous guests on how to grow a business, how to get ahead in your fitness business, or whatever sort of entrepreneurial task you are going ahead with. There is tips for days, golden nuggets for days. So make sure you check out every single episode of Season 1. Let's get into Season 2. I will talk to you at the end. Welcome back to the Fit Pro Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Faz, and today we have a very special guest, a friend of mine I've known for a few years. He's got 10 years experience in the fitness industry. He's been a trainer, a manager, a PT coach. He's also got his own online consulting business. He's started and let go of 2 gyms and is trained in NLP and hypnosis, so he might hypnotize us all. Joining us from New Zealand, we have Nick Ritchie. Nick, how are you, man?
I'm really good, Marvin. Fantastic to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, man. So take a few seconds and let the listeners know who you are personally, and then we'll get into the show.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for that. Both Marvin and I don't know about Marvin, but I'm just winging this today. So I just want to thank you guys for listening in. And I guess like Marvin said, I've been in the industry for 10 years, but I really started in the industry. Right before in high school, I was the low confident kid, walked around, shoulders shrugged all the time. And I got to a point one day where I really needed to join a gym. So I walked into the gym and there were loud music blaring and, well, there was fit people everywhere. And I just felt out of place. But needless to say, I sat down with a personal trainer. And he said to me, "What do you want to achieve?" And I said, "I want to look like Brad Pitt in the movie Fight Club." Like some of you guys might have seen that movie anyway. So he was like, "Okay." Well, he looked me in the eye and he said, "Well, if you work your ass off over the next, 6 months to a year, we can get you that six pack." So that was really my introduction to the industry. And I don't know how much detail we're going to go into today. I've got a lot to share. Hopefully, I can share a lot of value on this call with you guys. But yeah, opened my first PT studio a little bit down the line. Ended up becoming a trainer myself and that sort of thing. But not too sure how detailed you want me to get into this backstory here, Marvin.
As much as you want, man. Again, we've got all the time in the world. It's the new format for the show in where it's unlimited. Usually we like to keep it to 40 minutes, but we want quality. We want quality and we want as much value as possible.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, awesome. Well, I'll just wing it then as usual. So,
Wing it.
Yeah. So what happened was, so I started working with my trainer, and he said to me, "Look, dude, you want to get these results, you want to look like Brad Pitt in the movie Fight Club." So we worked together. 6 months later, I had the six pack, and then a year from joining the gym, with my trainer's encouragement, I stepped on stage in a little black G-string and flexed my muscles, looking like an Oompa with the red spray paint that typically fitness competitors have. And I got a second placing in my category. It was a small show, so, but it was the first time in my life that I really achieved anything that I really set my mind to. Before, it was like I was always struggling in high school. I was always getting bullied and picked on. It was like I just didn't have a lot of confidence. And it was like I stepped off that stage and I was just like, wow, I can really achieve whatever I set my mind to. And I really took that into working with my own clients, and my workmates started saying, "Wow, look at what you've been able to achieve. How did you do it? What are you doing?" And so I started talking to my workmates, and before you know it, I was helping them out with PT, and then of course I got into studying, training, and shortly after I found myself opening a PT studio. As most personal trainers, business is really daunting. And so just when I started getting some success, when I had a whole bunch of clients, I started to get before and after photos and testimonials, and I had some really cool connections with local businesses, and they were sending me clients, and it was going really well. The Christchurch Earthquake hit. And I remember that day because I had a client swinging on the pull-up bars, and I said, dude, stop swinging. You're supposed to be doing pull-ups here. And it turns out the entire ground was shaking. So we ran towards the door. We missed the door the first time because the door handle moved. And we got outside, and we're sort of jumping around like as if we were on a ship on high seas, and the thing swaying back and forth, and it was just looking around at the mountains, and they looked steady, but the ground was moving. And so if any of you guys have been in an earthquake before, like if you spend time in Bali or around that area where you've got the circle of fire, then you'll sort of know what it feels like. Really unnerving. And so after the earthquake, I literally had all my client base disappear overnight, and I was faced with this adversity of, well, what do I do? Like, I mean, the whole world that I just created had disappeared overnight, and I had my clients calling me up the next day saying, look, Nick, I can't train anymore because my car fell through a car parking lot building, or, the building that I was working out of that collapsed, or, I just, my house that I was living in got torn apart. So it was a really like nerve-wracking time. And I just remember the drive home was a lot like my clients who I was training during the earthquake. And he got on the phone with his dad, and his dad said, hey, you should probably come back home. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess so. And he's like, well, your boat's on fire. And he's like, oh, okay, I better cancel the personal training session. So of course I'm like, of course you should. So of course, my client, Ed, he drives home. It usually takes him 15 minutes, took him 4 hours. And by the time he got home, his boat was burned down and his house had been crushed by a boulder because he lived on the beach side by the cliffs there. And, that was a similar experience that happened to a lot of my clients. They lost what they had. And so it was the same for me. I was driving home, and I just listened to an audio from a guy called Jim Rohn. I think most of you guys have heard of him if you've been following Tony Robbins. He was Tony Robbins' original mentor.
100%.
Yeah, and I just remember Jim Rohn saying, with every challenge comes opportunity, but with every opportunity comes challenge. And I just kept repeating to myself. I was holding onto the steering wheel, I was looking out, and I was seeing all these other cars back to back with traffic, and I just kept repeating to myself, where's the opportunity? Where's the opportunity? Where's the opportunity? And for me, what happened over the next few hours was the opportunity was, all right, I'm going to relocate to a country I've never been before, to a town I've never been before. I know one person there, and I'm going to start again. And so I relocated to Perth, Australia, which is actually, subsequently yourself and we actually met, Marvin.
Yep.
So I got to Perth, and I connected with one of my business coaches who I was working with, who helped me build up the Christchurch studio before the earthquake. And I connected with him, and he was like, you know what, I've seen what you've been able to do, like turning that adversity into an opportunity, and I really want to work with you. So I was like, yeah, but I've done, I've really sort of worked on sales and that sort of thing. But at the time I was like an up and coming trainer, like new studio that had just, fallen over. And he's like, yeah, but, just follow our systems, and, you can help other trainers with their sales and stuff. So I worked with him, and I actually, we got some really cool results for some personal training clients. But what happened with that company is it actually went into insolvency, but only after it had turned over $1 million in the space of 2 years. So I won't name names, but in this particular business coaching company, the guy did amazingly well, but then he moved the company into insolvency. He had his personal reasons, so here I was stuck again.
Can't seem to get unstuck.
Exactly, that's right. And so I was like, oh, what do I do now? And so yeah, it was another challenging time. And so what I did was I started working with some other 24-hour gyms, and I learned a whole lot about their systems, about leveraging time and staff and that sort of thing. And just when I found a 24-hour gym that I was really liked working with, and I was having a good time, and just when everything got really good, I got hit with another spanner in the works. I ended up having to relocate to Sydney, and so I had to pick up the life that I'd built in Perth. And Marvin, I met you at a similar time, just before I'd relocated to Sydney there. And so what happened was I was like, oh, now I got to start a new business, in a new city once again. So what I decided to do was I started to open up a PT business in Cronulla. So for those of you who know Sydney, Cronulla is south of Bondi Beach, a little bit of a drive down south a little bit. Yep. I didn't know anyone, and I was really concerned because again, I was in a place where I didn't know anybody, and I had a wall. I'd opened up the PT business again, and I was operating out of a gym, but I didn't have enough leads to stay running, and I almost had to close up and go back to a job. And the truth is, I needed more money. Without it, I couldn't do what I wanted. I couldn't travel. I couldn't have adventures. I mean, heck, I couldn't even eat if I didn't make any more money. And as you guys can relate, as Marvin, I'm sure you can relate as well. When you don't have PT clients, you got no money. But when you're operating from that place of scarcity, I felt like I was constantly trying to get enough clients so I could make enough money so I could actually just live, let alone thrive. And so unfortunately, at that time, I was sitting in my apartment, and I had this amazing beach right outside my doorstep, Cronulla Beach. If you guys have been there, it's white sand and blue skies, blue water. It's just surfers cruising along the waves there, and there's this amazing skyline. These apartments right across the beach. It's an incredible place.
You're painting a picture.
What's that?
You're painting a picture. I wish I lived next to the beach.
Nice. But for me, I sat there in my apartment and I looked down at my knees, and I really started questioning my integrity as a trainer. I thought I was questioning myself. I felt like I had a lot of self-doubt about myself, and I was worried that I'd become a failure in the fitness industry. Just another statistic. And a friend of mine had said that 90% of trainers who don't get a job 2 weeks out of their course end up not getting a job at all and moving into something else, like flipping burgers at McDonald's. And for those trainers who do get a job or do go into PT, after 2 years, 90% of them are no longer trainers. Now, I don't know how accurate those stats are, but they were concerning me at the time. And so, I was struggling there. But then I realized, I was like, holy crap, most of my potential clients are probably on Facebook. And I just read a statistic that said that there's 1 billion people worldwide on Facebook. And I was like, the exact people that I want to work with are probably on Facebook in the Cronulla area. And so I put together a little bit of what I did was after I had that sort of epiphany, I put together this Facebook plan, and I created a Facebook group, and I started posting daily. And I started posting video tutorials, a quick here's how to do push-ups correctly. I posted motivational tips. I posted some of the struggles I was going through just with my own personal fitness. And I really just started using Facebook groups and just hammering them daily, not only with value in my own Facebook group, but I actually searched for my local area. So I searched Cronulla, and then I searched networking and stuff like that. Yeah. And it turns out that in that area there was a Cronulla Facebook group that was just a general public Cronulla Facebook group. So I started hammering that, and I just posted my offer in there, and I'd also post some tips and stuff like that. But the truth is, if I didn't do that, for me, I was still I was hammering away, and I didn't know if I'd get the result, getting enough clients, and I ended up picking up a couple clients through that. I think at the time, just using that strategy, I think I ended up with like 8 clients making I think they were all paying like $100 a week. So I was making like $800, and I was like, sweet, I can pay my bills, I can eat,
Enough to survive, yeah.
Yeah. And so, but for me, my biggest fear was failing and having to move back in with my parents in New Zealand.
Why was that your biggest fear? Going back to New Zealand and having to start again?
Yeah. My parents got this little bunk bed because I have a 9-year-old little brother. So I just imagine me like bunking up with him, and
yeah, that'll kick your ass into gear for sure.
Being like a mid to late 20s, adult.
Look like stepbrothers.
Yeah.
So much room for activities.
Yeah, and I just had such high expectations of myself that I was like, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that that would happen, and I felt like I couldn't live with myself if that did happen. So then then everything changed. So I took this idea about Facebook, about all my clients are probably on Facebook, or at least most of them. And I went ahead and I did a short course on Facebook ads. I saw this ad pop up on Facebook, and it was like, learn Facebook ads. And I was like, okay, I'm in. And I was like, well, if I can get clients just using, these Facebook groups here, I mean, what could I do if I actually learned how to use Facebook properly? So I learned this course, and luckily I had already had a little bit of previous experience just using most of us, if we're born, I was born in 86. So for most of us that are born around that time, we sort of grew up with computers, and we sort of have a pretty good grasp of, of technology. So what happened was, actually, it reminds me, back in Perth, I sat down with a bunch of fitness business owners while I was in that business coaching company, and we sat around in a circle, and we were talking about what's the number one problem that most fitness businesses face. And that problem, we all came to the agreement, like some of them were like, systems, not having like the right booking systems, or not having the right quality control, like hiring trainers, and then they end up just being really rude to clients, or just not, providing the same quality that you'd expect as the business owner that you'd want to provide.
Yeah.
Or sales calls and actually sitting down and making sales consults, those choke up a bunch of time, but they're still really important. But what we reduced it down to the most simplest form was leads. So what happened was, after I did this Facebook course, I had too many leads. So I was checking my spreadsheets, and I was trying to call people while doing personal training. You're training your clients, and then you're getting home and you're having a quick bite to eat, and then you're going to training some more clients, and to have to call leads at the same time as well, that's really, you're really hustling at that point, right, Marvin?
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. So yeah, I had too many leads, which is, some people say, oh, that's a good problem to have. And so that was a bit of a new challenge. But just as I started to get a really consistent client base up, and what I was doing was I created what's called a low barrier to entry offer, which is an offer that costs $97 or less. So I crafted this 21-day challenge. It was called my Drop a Dress Size in 21 Days challenge. Something catchy name that it was marketed to females, because on Facebook you can select whether it's a female and what age. So I just did target females 20 to 35, and what I did was I took my existing service and I discounted it by about 75%. And my friends who were trainers were like, you can't discount training because that just, devalues your service. And I said, well, would you rather sell your service for 25% what it usually is, or would you rather have no clients and end up, my biggest fear was going and, bunking up with my little brother, So it was like, well, what would you rather do? So I did that. I offered that program for $97. They got 9 personal training sessions, and I ran that. The first time I ran it, I got 15 clients. 15 that signed up to that program. So that was, $1,500 right there. Boom. And what that did was that sort of funded me, along with my existing client base that I already had, that sort of funded me for that 3 weeks. And then the next one I ran, I got a little bit smarter, and I thought, well, I think I can still charge $97, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these ladies and I'm going to pair them up together. So if I've got a 9 a.m. time slot, what's stopping me from just saying, hey, Jenny's going to join you, Bo, and you guys are going to train together today at 9 a.m. And so what I did was I sort of crafted this semi-private PT, and I was still charging the same price for this 21-day challenge, and no one was complaining because I was still delivering that sort of one-on-one service quality. But I was like, you're like, it's like a juggler in a circus, like you're juggling both clients. You sort of understand where their strength is, where their weaknesses are, and you're sort of giving them appropriate weights and selections of, exercises. Yeah. So anyway, so I did that, and that worked really well. And I ended up restructuring my PT, and I gave people the option, once they finished my 21-day challenge for $97, I gave them the option to sign up to, I wrote down on this card, I flipped my business card over and I said, okay, well, I did a little yes letter. So, because the more times people say yes, the more likely they are to sign up to something. They sort of become more and more open.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, you're enjoying the training? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, and can you see yourself like continuing on and with the training? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, and you said you got these goals you want to achieve. You want to get down to like 75 kgs, and the person's like, yeah. And I remember this one client. She was a flight attendant, and she was always like out drinking. But anyway, she loved the social aspect of PT and being able to know her trainer and really bond. And sometimes people, well, Marvin, you probably know this. I mean, like people buy you, they don't buy necessarily your service. So they buy you first, then they buy your service.
Exactly.
So she was awesome. She's always, and being a flight attendant, I think the fun thing about working with flight attendants is that it doesn't matter what you're getting to do. There's always a smile on their face. Whether it doesn't matter if it's burpees or, So I said to her, I flicked this card over and I did the yes letter, and I said, look, if you want to do 3 PT sessions a week, and you want to do these one-on-one, it's going to be like $150. And they're 30-minute sessions, 3 30-minute sessions a week. And I was like, but if you want to do semi-private, which is pretty much just like one-on-one, except I'll pair you up with like another friend, somebody you want to train with, or just one of my other clients. All my other clients are cool. I'll pair you guys up together and I'll train you guys together. It only costs you $77 a week. I was like, what would you prefer, the 150 or the 77? She's like, I'll go with the 77. So it was like this. It's like this really cool contrast that you can create when you show someone like a higher price, even though they know that's a legitimate price. Like you're not faking that or making it up. Yeah. And then you're giving them that option to still get that service and that personalized attention from you. But you're giving them that option to get it at it seems like a discount. But in actual reality, when you do the numbers on $77 and you multiply that by 3, my hourly rate increases more than if I was charging the $150 a week for 3 sessions. So yeah, I was making more money. I was doing the same amount of time. I have more clients, having more fun. And then of course I had an opportunity to move back to New Zealand. Now this was not an easy. That wasn't an easy thing. Because the problem was that I realized Christchurch was still in a down economy after the earthquake, and it's a bit of a grey city, and it wasn't. We're talking about like the bright sunny Cronulla beach, versus the grey smoggy Christchurch.
That's still being rebuilt.
Exactly, still being rebuilt. 90% of the CBD, for those of you who aren't aware of the situation, 90% of the CBD had to be demolished. There's commercial building leases where they've been vacant for years. I feel sorry for the guys who own these business buildings.
Yeah.
And there's been billions getting pumped into the city itself to help rebuild it. But I mean, heck, it's been like, that happened in 2011. It's 2017 now, and the city's still got heaps to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was a tough decision, and I sat on the beach with my partner at the time, and I was just like, you know what, like, I realized I can build a PT business anywhere at this point. So, if it means that much to you to move to New Zealand, and we had an opportunity to get into a lease at a good price, then I said, you know what, let's take the risk. So I had the opportunity to do that. Now, unfortunately, I had to leave all my old clients behind. I couldn't just like chuck them in my suitcase as much as I wanted to, especially, the flight attendant with a grin there. I'd get her to do 10 burpees and she would still be grinning. It was just amazing. And I had another client. She was 120 kilos when she started with me, and like by the time she finished with me, she was 100, and then I think now she's down to like 85 or something because I passed her on to a friend who's a trainer there. But just these, you get connected with your clients and with their results, and you really want the best for them. So I had to leave these friends behind, which was really sad. It was a really tough decision, but there was the opportunity to set up a brand new gym from scratch. And so the thing is with that is I was kind of like tossing up between, like, I didn't want to leave my old clients behind and say goodbye to them, but I also wanted fulfillment, and I really wanted to live my life with passion. Like, yeah. I mean, you know what it's like, Marvin. Like, if you're doing something that's, it's beneath what you want for yourself. When you close your eyes at night and you go to sleep, you're dreaming about stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you're living a life that's not 100% congruent with that, then we all start to have these these internal battles go on.
100%.
So I felt like if I didn't take the risk and take that leap of faith and close up PT in Sydney and relocate over to New Zealand, that I'd always be wondering, what if, what would happen if, if I stayed in Sydney. I'd be thinking, what are the possibilities? What could have happened if I actually, restarted again and had the opportunity to build another gym elsewhere.
You become an expert at starting from the bottom. That's what happens.
Yeah, you become absolutely. So, but then I realized, and what happened was I realized just before we flew out that if I created something according to my values, what would happen was, the things that were most dearest to me, the things that I really was passionate about, what would happen is I'd actually end up speaking directly to those people who shared my same values, and I'd actually attract my ideal perfect client. And I remember listening to an interview with Frank Kern. You probably heard of him, yeah. Marvin. And he was talking about how he found himself one day staring out of his mansion window across this like swampy forest, feeling really depressed while he had a Ferrari and a Lamborghini parked up in his garage, and his kids in the other room and his wife, and he just couldn't understand why he felt so upset. And for him, it was that he'd spent so much time focusing on marketing just so that he could get clients to make money, that he found himself living working with clients on a daily basis, that if he saw them on the street, he'd turn the other way and run. So, and now that's not the same situation I was in, but I was in the same situation in that if I didn't get clarity on the type of people that I wanted to work with and the type of business that I want, I'd wind up years later down the track, living a life that I just, wasn't being fulfilled by. So what happened was I had this sort of realization that I should create something that that's really aligned with my values. So what I did was I realized, I love working with women. I've got a plant-based approach to nutrition. So I really love like the plant-based stuff. Got nothing against like the other approaches. But I was like, here's what I'm going to do. So I created a gym for women who wanted to lose body fat without having to give up carbs like bread and or having to eat meat, basically.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. And so I sort of that's what I created, and that's a big risk because most of the fitness industry at the time, especially in a small town like Christchurch, is 400,000 people. The other trainers were all recommending like a paleo version of nutrition.
High protein, red meat.
Chicken. High protein. Yeah, exactly. Red meat chicken. So I realized that if this didn't work, I was going to fail and fall into bankruptcy. And the trouble with that is that I had a commercial lease that I just signed up to. And a bankruptcy doesn't protect you from a commercial lease because you sign a personal guarantee on that thing. And I remember sitting down across from this grey-haired lawyer, and he looked at me and my business partner, and he said, well, we're going to get you guys to sign away on this personal guarantee here. And you guys are aware of all the, you guys are aware of what this means. So we scribbled away, of course. So I realized that by signing on that dotted line, that I couldn't fail. If I did, it'd be bankruptcy and it'd be into that bunk bed.
Still that bunk bed. It's still on your mind.
Damn that bunk bed. So what I did was I didn't want to fail. That was my biggest issue. So I took everything I'd learned over the last 10 years from first joining the gym, wanting to get that Brad Pitt body, and then starting up the studio, and then having the earthquake, come down on it, and then running into my old business coach, working with him, working with PTs, and then working with 24-hour gyms and seeing how well they had structured their systems so they could have, a small amount of employees and be able to turn over a large revenue. And then I looked at the Facebook marketing and the local business marketing and these different areas that I'd learned about over time. And I just took everything that I'd learned, and I took the small amount of money that I'd saved up from Sydney, and I sunk 15K into the startup. And so that's not a lot of money.
No, absolutely not.
But it was enough to buy some kettlebells and some dumbbells and some squat racks and some barbells and some plates. And, what's funny, Marvin, is that the thing that cost the most is setting up that personal training studio, setting up this gym, was the rubber floors. I don't know if you've looked at
freaking expensive. I know.
Yeah. It's so expensive.
So literally, Nick, I'll stop you there for a second. But when you're listening to what Nick's saying and the journey he's been on over this 10-year period, basically, you can see almost a blueprint appearing. And I mean, what you've done is you've gone from somebody that's just entering the fitness industry and trying new things to being successful, falling on your face, starting again, etc. You've done what most PTs never really get to do. That once they experience a certain level of failure, they sort of just walk away with the tails between their legs and go back to whatever they were doing. But you've done it on a few occasions where you've fallen down and you've gotten back up. What causes you to have that sort of motivation besides the bunk bed? How do you keep getting back up? Because I think that's the most important thing. And I mean, your experience is great. We've talked about it a lot, but obviously I want to get into the meat and bones of things. But how do you keep getting back up? How do you get your motivation, and what's your mentality like?
Yeah, you know what's really interesting is that when I was a really young child, I remember walking into the classroom, 5 years old, and the teacher introduced me to a new school, and they said, "Oh, look, it's Nick here." And I remember staring at all the kids' faces and being terrified. And then when the lunch bell rang, I was running out across the green field and feeling the wind pass past my ears, and then all of a sudden I felt this yank, and I had this rat's tail, this little rat's tail on the back of my head, and my mother thought it would be a cute idea to send me off to school at 5 years old with this rat's tail. Mean bitch, I'm just joking. And So there was this kid yanking on my rat's tail, laughing. And I tell you what, Marvin, like, I feel like my whole life has been a constant struggle, and it's been full of a lot of victories. It's been full of a lot of success, but it's also been full of just about as much struggle as I can possibly imagine. Not struggle in terms of comparing it to like another country or a child in a different country, but comparing it to my own personal experience. I've had to persevere from falling down and getting back up time and time again. And for me, I think internally what really drives me is realizing that all of us fall down, but the worst thing we can do is stay down, because then we're admitting defeat. And I would rather fail. I think Thomas Edison says, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways or 10,000 things that don't work, So for me, admitting defeat is really the epitome of failure. So as said, I choose to look at failure as a learning experience, and that reframe in itself, if any of you guys have done NLP, a reframe is just changing the way you're looking at something.
Yeah.
I feel like when one of my first mentors sat down with me when I was a really young trainer, and he taught me a whole lot, but one thing he looked at me and he said, look, like, in this industry, you're going to have a lot of people that tell you what you can and can't do. And it's up to you whether you listen to those people. And the best thing you can really do is take whatever experience you have and turn it into something great. And so for me, I feel like the accumulation of my childhood and then into high school years. I mean, heck, I wasn't just, unconfident as in general. I was unconfident with everything. I remember there was this girl I had a crush on when I was 16. And when most guys were out partying, drinking, and having girlfriends, I walked up to this girl in the high school corridors, and there were these blue lockers. And I walked up to her. She was in a circle of her friends, and I walked up to her and I just blurted this out, right? I was like, "Will you go out with me?" And so she turns around, goes bright red. All her friends laugh, and of course I didn't hear the end of that for the next 6 months. But it's like every time I try, I fall down, but then every now and then I'll try, and then it will work out. And I guess I just kind of hold on to that faith that, as long as I keep working away, as long as I keep pushing myself, eventually I'll get the results I want. So I don't know, man. It's hard to really put a lot of this stuff into words, but it's a great question to ask.
Yeah, but I mean, I think struggles are required in order to survive in life in general. Look, because in order to stand up, you got to know what it's like falling down. You really do. And one thing that always intrigued me is, how does one let go of two businesses? Some people can't really even fathom having one, let alone two at separate times in their life. How does one let go of that, knowing that they're going to be... Well, I'm struggling to find my words, but knowing that there is more to come, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question.
I'm full of them. I'm full of them today, man. Don't worry about it.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it, Marvin. So, for those of you guys who don't know, I mean, pretty much within 12 months, I'd turned that $15,000 gamble into a $500,000 a year business. So we're turning over $8,000 a week within 12 months. But I had a war when my business partner wanted to split. And so for me, it was either keep going with my business partner who wanted to split and run the business into the ground and then, potentially end up bankrupt, or, sell my half off and just let this monster of a business go, just let it go. And I chose to sell my other half, and I feel like by doing so, although I let go of something I created, I sort of come back to that. If you've ever read Way of the Superior Man, one of the things that's mentioned in that book is that it's by David Data, for those of you who haven't read it. Great audiobook as well, if you got the audiobook. is that he says that everything you build in your lifetime will eventually fall apart. Everything you create will eventually disappear. Everything that's born eventually dies, and it's not to kind of get all like, ooh, like, negative on it. It's more like having a realization that, for every breath that you take, you're going to have an out breath and you're going to breathe out, and that's essentially the epitome of life. So anything we produce, anything that we give, is eventually dissipates. So I guess I try to think about it that anything that happens between now and the time that I die is going to, it's anything I create, anything that I put forward into this world, eventually it's going to disappear. So the best I can do is whatever I'm doing, I can make a difference in the lives of other people. If I'm making other people's lives better in some way, even without having, like, for example, if you're in a relationship with a woman and you feel like you're giving everything to her, then you need to be okay with her never giving back to you in the same way that you give to her. It's the same, like, so I sort of take that and I sort of feel the same way about business. Like, you can build something amazing, you can build a community of raving fans of, these amazing people you love working with, but I feel like you've got to be okay with letting it go as well at the same time. Like, you're creating something without an attachment to the outcome, I think is what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, and I get it. I 100% do, and I think a lot of listeners will as well. But I think what most people don't realize, and I think the fitness industry in itself gets a bad rap for it, but there are a lot of smart people in the fitness industry that are starting businesses. You are definitely one of them in my eyes, because when you speak, when a normal person speaks to a below average personal trainer, they're speaking to basically a meathead, somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing. Whereas if they speak to someone like you, they go, wow, there's so much more to this than I ever imagined. And just listening to you, you don't sound like the typical personal trainer, if that makes sense. You don't sound like a meathead. You don't sound like someone who picks up heavy things and puts them down. And I think what the most important thing is the self-education that goes along with the entire journey. And what would you recommend a new PT getting into the industry to start doing, to start growing themselves?
Yeah, I really think that first of all, like, you'd agree with this, Marvin, that the people you surround yourself by make a massive impact, have a massive impact on your life. And if you surround yourself with, as you say, Marvin, meatheads who just pick stuff up and put them down. Like, as much as we might love picking stuff up and putting it down, we've also got to have a brain on our shoulders. So first of all, like, reaching out to personal trainers who have been in the industry for longer, who are producing the results you want, whether they've got the clients that you want or whether they, think the way you want. I spent 9 months living with a personal trainer, a mentor of mine, and he taught me a lot about meditation, about groundedness and centering my emotions. And I think that there's a lot can be said for NLP or neuro-linguistic programming. I feel like I learned that later on down the road, but I feel like that was a really great foundation for communication and understanding how the mind works. And as one of the creators of NLP or neuro-linguistic programming once said, John Grindler, he said, who's driving the bus? And a lot of us, because of our programming through our childhood and adolescence and then into adulthood, because of our programming through childhood, a lot of us are just like, we're not driving the bus. Like, we're literally sitting in that back seat and the bus is taking us wherever, right? Like, it's going to take us into a ditch and we're like, oh, how did we get here? Like, we're not like taking responsibility for our lives. Whereas if we put ourselves in the driver's seat and we say to ourselves, and this is something John Grindler said, he said, if you put yourself in the driver's seat and you take responsibility for everything that happens in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, if you take responsibility for all of it, then you're giving yourself the power to be able to make a change, whether it's make a change to your own life or make a change and help others, make changes to their own life. Whereas if we're constantly living at effect, where we're like, oh, why did this happen to me? Why did I end up with my bus, in a ditch? Or why did I end up, with no PT clients? Or, why did my girlfriend leave me? Or why did this and that? If we're not taking personal responsibility, then we don't have any power to change anything. So I really feel like jumping into the driver's seat and taking personal responsibility is probably one of the most important lessons I learned from one of my PT mentors really early on. I remember one day I came home and I was just like, oh, I don't have enough clients. This sucks. And he's like, well, there's only one reason why you don't have enough clients. And I was like, why? And he's like, because you're not making it happen. So I love NLP. Not selling it, but I love it because it teaches people the foundations for how human beings think, and it gives us some shortcuts to make changes in our lives that are substantial and meaningful. So other than surrounding yourself by some really positive mentors, I had 2 PT mentors really early on that taught me a lot of really cool stuff. But also making reading a priority. And Marvin, I know you're a reader, and
yep.
And you touched on personal development, and that was a concept I got introduced to actually when I was 18 years old. When I was 18, I was bricklaying around the back of a house, slapping mud onto the side of a wall, and my Irish friend comes around, and I'm not going to do an Irish accent, but he comes around the wall, and he says to me, hey, how would you like to make an extra $500 a week? And we all know where this is going. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, yeah, that sounds fantastic, being 18 and all. And he's like, just come along to this community hall tonight and we'll show you. And I thought, this sounds... I was like, am I just stepping into a cult of some sort? So I get along to this community hall, and I'm greeted by this really nice, smiley eyes, short older lady. And then I look up and there's her husband, grey-haired chap, and he's, in his sort of 60, 65, and he's wearing a suit. And I thought, this is either Jehovah's Witness or it's some sort of, cult convention. So I sat down, and as these guys were talking, they actually ended up sharing with me a concept that was really important. And the old guy towards the end of the seminar, he looked me in the eye and he said, if I knew this when I was 18, I'd be retired by the time I'm 25. And he was selling me, and I was like, where do I sign up at the end? But needless to say, what they introduced me to was that some of the things we've been taught in school really don't apply to the real world. Like we're taught about how to go out and get a job, but that's all we're taught. We're not taught about, how to go out and start a business, which is what us personal trainers are doing for the most part. It started to have me think about, well, what else don't I know? And so they introduced me to my first personal development book, which was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. You might have read it, Marvin.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, love that book. So I read that and I was just like, wow, this is amazing stuff. And for a lot of you guys who don't know, Tony Robbins, some of his foundations before he got really started, not only did he get mentored by Jim Rohn, but he actually ended up studying NLP through John Grindler and Richard Bandler, the creators of NLP. So I read that book, and then it planted the seed of personal growth, and not only had I had a whole bunch of struggles over my life up to that point of being 18, but it really set the fire in me that realized that not only could I be financially better off at some point, I thought, 25, I got 7 years to do it. I'll be like a millionaire by the time I'm 25. But it also set me up to think, all right, well, if I can learn some of these concepts and that can dramatically change my confidence and the way I speak with people and the way I think about things, what else can I learn? What else can I do? So that's really where the seed was planted back at that little seminar there.
That's perfect. I think a lot of people end up in that situation at some point where they do interact with those people that know a little bit more, have been down the track a little bit further, and have some tips to share. Perfect, Nick. So we've spoken about a lot today, and I feel like just the chat, just the initial introduction, just absolutely hammered home a few points to new PTs starting out there, and just people in the fitness industry. You don't have to be a PT, just entrepreneurial at heart. But what I want to know from you is there a golden nugget that you would give to somebody looking to become successful in the fitness industry? What could they do differently or the same as you? What could they do that will set them apart from all the other cookie cutter people in the fitness industry at the moment?
I think a lot of people in the fitness industry at the moment are doing a lot of what everyone else is doing. So, a lot of the young personal trainers, they come out of college and then they just preach the same thing that they learn in college. Whereas when you take a step back and you decide to, think about what you learn in college and what else is out there, the lack of information that perhaps you haven't picked up on, and really begin to explore that. I think that's really important, which I guess like you and I sort of understand, Marvin, like critical thinking, being able to, somebody gives you information, and I don't expect you guys to like listen to everything I say and execute it, but when somebody gives you some information, I think it's really useful to not just take it on board straight away, but assess it for how you feel about it, how it aligns with your purpose. And I think a lot of personal trainers are really happy to just run the cookie cutter, but if you want to be different and you really want to separate yourself from the pack, and attract a lot more clients, it's really important to, I think, one, get really clear on what it is that you're really passionate about when it comes to the fitness industry. I mean, you might love Zumba. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you love strength training. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you love head training. There's fast-paced workouts. Maybe that's where you sit with that. Get really clear on your nutrition. What nutrition approach do you want to focus on and promote? And then what type of attitude are you putting out there? So, are you looking at like the Kayla or the Ashy or whatever, and you're looking at, what the other girls are doing if you're a female trainer, and you're sort of trying to model that? Or are you looking at what's not being provided in the industry and instead trying to fill a niche with that? Because I guarantee you, if you look at what everyone else is doing and find a way to put your own spin on it, I think that's where you'll find a golden nugget. And that was really where we found a lot of gold with the second PT studio that we opened up. So yeah, look at what everyone else is doing, and then do the opposite. Obviously you're still gonna invest yourself into your marketing and your sales and into your systems. Make sure you got those aligned. But don't be afraid to color outside the box, because there's a community of people out there that aren't being served across a wide variety of different niches in the health and fitness industry. And if you can find that community that aligns best with you, whether it's people that are 100 kilos plus, maybe that's a community that's not being served, that you could create a space for them, a comfortable space for them to enter into. Then that's really where I think you can make a big impact. Because a friend of mine said the other day, we were having a conversation, and he said you don't need thousands of clients, you don't need hundreds of clients, you just need a few really good clients that really love what you do, that are really that they really get a lot of value from you, and they'll turn into raving fans, and you'll get referrals, left, right, and center. So instead of focusing on serving the many, focus on serving the few really well, and I think that's where your PT business will really take off. So even if you've got 10 clients or 5 clients, focus on serving them as much as you can. Invest as much time and value into them, obviously appropriately. Don't undersell your service, but give them a lot of value, and then ask them. I remember early back when I was a trainer, I was listening to a PT coach, and he said, when I sit down with a new client, I say, I want you to rely on me to help you to achieve your goals. And they're like, yeah, sure. And he's like, And I want to ask you, can I rely on you to help me achieve my business goals by helping to refer me one or two of your friends? I think that's amazing. Like, saying that up front, when you first sign up, when you're, in that first interaction with someone, when they're bringing you on as a trainer, I think that sets the frame for a future relationship, which is where you give them heaps of value and really help change their life, and they help change your life by providing you with referrals, by providing you with high quality clients.
Well said, man. Definitely. I think it's something that's not done enough in the fitness industry, especially with PTs. I mean, if you look at what everybody else is doing, everybody else isn't doing well. If we're being honest, there's a few that are doing really well, and then everybody else is just making it. So if you want to be like everybody else that's just making it, because that's the biggest secret in the fitness industry, is that everybody's doing well. It's like if you ask someone that's in sales, how did you do last month? Everybody will say they did well. Nobody's going to say I'm doing terribly. Right? So you just gotta find your niche. Nick had a great niche with what he was doing, and it obviously did serve them well, making, again, obviously a business that is and still pretty much successful, right? Correct? You've just sold off your bit and you're gonna do your own thing, but the business is still going, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And so there's lessons to be learned in this entire episode. I didn't even have to speak a lot, Nick. You said everything. You said everything from the beginning. That's what I wanted. That's what I expected was going to come out, is that your journey, again, there's so many facets, there's so many sides to you and what you do. And I think that's something that people can take away from this episode, is that they can look at you and your journey and they can go, oh, I could do one of the many things Nick has done. And again, you don't want to be the master of what's it, jack of all trades, master of none. But I feel like you need to figure out what you want to do over the long period of time and just master that one specific aspect of your game. Now, Nick, it's been great having you on. Where can all of the listeners find you on social media?
Yeah, so you guys can find me just by searching for Nick Ritchie on Facebook. Or you can look up on Instagram just at Thrive Entrepreneur, which is where I get my most fulfillment now with helping other business owners just work away and grow their business. So you can find me through Instagram or Facebook. Facebook's probably the place where I'm most active with my content.
Perfect, Nick. I'll stick notes below in the show notes, obviously, with links to all of your social media. But look, it was great having you on, Nick.
Oh, it's been fantastic, Marvin. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Look, we'll have to do it again. Obviously, there's going to be way more episodes to come, and obviously, you've got a lot more stories to tell. So we'll have to do it again at some point. But Nick, thanks for coming on. Guys, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.